Hello.
Hello, AOS fans!
It's the Agents of Sigmar.
And in this video, we're asking, should GW rotate out old warbands?
So as 2024 dawned, GW threw a new FAQ out the window on their drive-by, as they are wont to do just before we're about to go to a tournament. You go, new rules! Throw it at us right in the face and then drive off.
Yeah, I suppose there's no reason why they should, but there's never any warning, is there? It's like maybe if they had like a schedule, and maybe it's going to be, I don't know if it was January the 1st, but it was more or less January the 1st, maybe they could do one every quarter and we'd know where we were. But they did unexpectedly drop an FAQ on us, and it was quite a comprehensive one. It got me thinking when I was reading it, because there was quite a lot of changes, because we've got like 50 warbands now.
Yeah.
And there were quite a lot of changes to quite a lot of warbands, or at least it felt like there were. And some of those changes were like changes to things they'd already changed.
Yeah.
And I was starting to think, well, it's just getting a bit mad.
It's long. It's multiple pages long. It's not like you can go, well, I'll just print this out and take it with me to the tournament.
No.
Because you're going to end up with a whole volume of stuff, of what's
most
changed.
of which is irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and also you run out of magenta ink.
Yeah, exactly.
A nightmare. I was just thinking, this is just a bit unwieldy, and there's just so many warbands, and do they have to keep trying to keep them in line and all that kind of stuff, and they might inadvertently make somebody really strong, or it's not ideal, I don't think. And I just feel like maybe now is the time to rotate out old warbands.
I can hear already like the cries of 1,000 souls who are abruptly cut off because they hit stop and close their browser and shut their laptop in disgust. But I do think there's we've got, especially one of our patrons at the minute, is going through trying to buy all the old warbands, and they just bought Godsworn Hunt, and we were like, yeah, you don't want to play with them. They're not very good at all. But there are a lot of warbands that are still floating around, and people sometimes suddenly go, I want to get all of them. And you're like, yeah, but do you though? Do you really?
Yeah, and I can totally see why they might want to do that. But at the same time, I don't think it's fair necessarily that they should have to chase it down on secondary seller sites, and then just so they can play them, and probably only play them once or twice.
And they go, wow, this is a rubbish.
So I think it will be quite nice from the competitive game at least. Obviously, you've always got your relic format, but for competitive game at least, I think they should probably ditch the warbands. But that will be incredibly unpopular because people will love playing the new warbands. Yeah. And obviously some of them they have updated, which I do like. That would be my preferred method. They could update them slowly. That would be good.
Like they did with Fast Rider's Sepulchral Guard recently.
Exactly. And obviously the Sepulchral Guard changes are really quite good. I'm not sure the Fast Rider ones are quite so good, but the Sepulchral Guard ones are really quite good. So I can see why they don't want to rotate out the warbands, but I really can see why there's a need to, particularly for new players. But then I come up with what I think is quite a good idea. And I proposed this to GW. Maybe I should send this video to John Bracken.
Are you listening, John?
Yeah.
Pay attention. Get ready with your pen and paper.
We already have seasonal rotation.
Yeah.
So basically every 2 years, something rotates out.
Yeah.
And so it's only 2 years worth of Underworlds, which is current at any one time, or 18 months worth of.
Yeah. Core box comes out, 2 years later it rotates out and as the new box comes in. And
they could do that with warbands as well.
Yeah.
So they were always like 10 or 16 warbands at the end of the season.
You'd
always have 8, and then there'd be like 2 new ones.
Yeah.
And then 4, and then they could just have that, but I don't think that's enough. So I reckon they should then pick 2 other 12-month periods and say these warbands are also valid for this 12 months
for tournaments. And
for
stuff.
Tournaments. Yeah. So you'd have whatever was valid for the general card play. That 2 year period would be valid, and then they would pick and say this for this year, Shadespire and Nightvolt, or Shadespire and Chasm. They could pick whatever they wanted.
For things like Shadespire and Nightvolt, they were like a whole year on their own. So you would just say Shadespire or Nightvolt, or you could have Beastgrave and Chasm.
Yeah, they could do it how they wanted. They could either do it by warband or they could do it by season. So then that would give you a good solid...
There's a lot of options there still.
Yeah, still a lot of options. Old players could still play their old warbands, and they would know that in 12 months' time a different old warband will come in, so it wasn't completely written off forever.
Yeah.
But it would just mean that they, and this is the neat part of my trick, they could print cards with the updates on for the seasons that were valid.
Yeah.
And they could even do a limited print run of the models if they wanted to. But they wouldn't have to do that, but they could. But they could print cards and say, these are the cards, so the character fighter cards with the updates on, And maybe if they've changed, I don't know if they've significantly changed any like upgrades or objectives, they could print those as well. Probably not, but they could do new fighter cards, packs of new fighter cards for the season, for this season of Warhammer Underworlds.
Yeah.
These are the cards and these are the rules. I think they would go down really well because I think people would buy them. I know GW don't really...
Everyone's always going to buy them.
Exactly. Well, exactly, because people always want to get hold of the cards, and people who've managed to get some of the old plastic kits that didn't have the cards could buy them and use them. GW are always sort of saying, well, we don't want to go back over old stuff. I don't know, they're always saying it, but I have heard it said. But this, I think, if they've got a good, reliable way of printing cards, which they seem to be a bit better about it now, it will be a really good way of making a bit of extra money on the side.
Yeah.
As well. And keeping the tournament more focused.
One problem you would have with that is that obviously when they try and work out what warbands are doing well and what warbands aren't, is they obviously look at all the tournaments being played and the warbands featuring therein. So if they then cut it down to just certain warbands, they wouldn't necessarily get quite as balanced a view because they wouldn't know, are people still taking Shadespire warbands because we didn't allow people to have Shadespire warbands for the last year or whatever it is.
I see what you're saying.
There would be that problem
I see what you're saying, but I don't think they changed the warbands, the old warbands, enough to make that.
Possibly not. I mean,
they did a little tweak to Valclav again. I'm not even sure what the change was, but I don't think that's enough to not do it.
It might not be. I could see obviously some players aren't going to like the fact that they're now being told you can't play Spokal Guard next year or whatever. Or it's a bad example because they're brand new, but you can't have Chosen Axes next year, or you can't play the Gits next year, or something like that.
I could see that, but I don't think there are any other games with a rolling card pool. I know it's a bit more than just a card pool, but that don't do that. I mean, my son plays Pokemon and stuff rotates out all the time.
Yeah.
There, and I just think it just makes it a bit more succinct.
I think given the scale of their releases, the number of new warbands and decks and stuff coming out every year, at some point they're going to have to do something to limit the scope because it's just too many for them to balance it all. It's just always going to have some problem.
And I suppose they get rid of that problem a little bit by always slowly making the warbands better. So it doesn't matter that these ones are weak.
Why would you take Eisenheim when you could take FLM?
Yeah, exactly. If people still want to play them, that's entirely up to them. But actually, they're probably not going to win. And I think there are very few cases where an old warband has suddenly got really good as a result of something they've changed.
There was a while ago, wasn't there, with Skaven, with Scritch and his Swarm. There are a few situations where they end up with quite broken decks for a little while, but that's not happened as much recently.
Ghosts, but they've nerfed Varclav and stuff now. The Ghosts made a reappearance.
Hammered into the ground. So
they made a reappearance, didn't they, at one point? I just think that would be a really neat way, and it'd be a neat way of getting new fighter cards out there for people who want them who haven't got them.
That is certainly something people would absolutely love to do. And I think we've done a video before about should GW rotate on warbands. I think the general consensus, again, then was it would probably be unpopular, but it probably should happen because there's just so many now. And it's a little unfair to new players especially, who then can't get hold of those old warbands. And then they're like, what are Scritch's Swarm? I've never heard of them. Or what are Garrick's? I don't know.
Or if you turn up at a tournament, we did talk about that in the video, you turn up at the tournament and somebody puts something down that they've never seen.
Yeah.
It's a bit harsh. I just think it would be a great way of saying, yes, we're invested in this game, and keeping it a bit more succinct and making it a bit tighter focus. In some ways, I think playing with a more restricted set of... It's not even that restricted, we're still talking about 24 plus warbands. Yeah. It just makes it a bit more focused, and sometimes a bit of focus on something makes things feel a little bit more special, I think. Yeah. And they get a more direct sort of comparing of which warbands are more popular than others. If they say, you can take anything Nightborn, like everybody goes with one or two warbands, they're going to sit there and go, okay, so nobody's taking these other warbands. Why is that? Exactly, and they could choose then, do we boost them or do we just basically quietly forget about them and never bring them back, because there's no reason why they have to do it by season. They could just say, this season all of the old warbands are valid, or something like that. And it could be themed that way. I mean, I know I could see immediately they theme it, all the Stormcast warbands are valid, but they could do that if they wanted to.
Yeah. So I think overall, yes, they do need to do something. There's so many warbands now bouncing around. Over 5 odd years now it's been going. There needs to be something. I think some kind of rotation would be good. But what do you at home think? Do you think that they should just be leaving all the warbands to be available 100% of the time forever? Should they be cutting them out every 2 years mercilessly? So, you know, if you don't get your chance to play with, you know, Severin Steelheart and his champions, or if you've missed your Mollog opportunity, then that's it. It's too late. You've just got to move on, buy something new.
I don't think they do that, but I think my suggestion is a little bit of a halfway house.
Yeah, could be. Yeah. So let us know in the comments below what you think about Robin's suggestion, or do you have any ideas of your own, or do you think it should be handled in a different way?
Yeah, do let us know in the comments below.
And don't forget to like, subscribe and ring that bell, because the more interactions and people coming back to our channel, the better it is for the channel.
Yeah, the more it gets promoted. And if you do want to support us further, you can consider checking us out on Patreon. We have a very vibrant Patreon community on Discord, which we absolutely love being part of. And your extra support helps us go towards making more and more videos.
Yeah. So we'll see you soon in the Underworlds.